The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Catherine sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair. Her hands trembled as she held the phone to her ear, listening to the dial tone that seemed to mock her desperation. She had called her sister Camilla 3 times in the past hour, but each call went straight to voicemail. "Please, Camilla," she whispered into the phone during her 4th attempt. "Dad is asking for you. The doctors say we don't have much time left." Catherine's father, Robert, lay unconscious in the hospital bed just a few feet away. The machine surrounding him beeped steadily, but she knew those sounds were becoming weaker with each passing hour. His face, once strong and full of life, now looked pale and fragile against the white pillowcase. The man who had taught her how to ride a bicycle, who had walked her down the aisle at her wedding, who had been her rock through every storm in life, was slipping away. The waiting room was filled with other families dealing with their own tragedies. Catherine watched as a young mother tried to comfort her crying child while an elderly man sat alone, staring at the floor with empty eyes. Everyone here carried the same heavy burden of uncertainty and fear. But what made Catherine's situation different was that she was facing this nightmare completely alone. 2 days ago, everything had been normal. Catherine had been at work, teaching her 3rd-grade class about butterflies, when her phone rang. It was the hospital calling to tell her that her father had collapsed at home. She had rushed to the emergency room, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. The doctor, a kind woman with tired eyes, had explained that Robert had suffered a massive stroke. The damage was severe, and while they would do everything possible, the family should prepare for the worst. Catherine's first instinct had been to call Camilla. Her older sister had always been the stronger one, the one who took charge during family crises. When her mother had died 5 years earlier, Camilla had handled all the funeral arrangements while Catherine could barely function through her grief. But this time, when Catherine needed her sister most, Camilla was nowhere to be found. The story between the 2 sisters was complicated, filled with years of misunderstandings and hurt feelings that had grown like weeds between them. It had started small, as most family feuds do. After their mother's death, there had been disagreements about the inheritance. Their parents had left the family home to both daughters, but Camilla had wanted to sell it immediately while Catherine had hoped to keep it in the family. The arguments had escalated, with harsh words spoken that could never be taken back. "You always were the weak one," Camilla had said during their last big fight 6 months ago. "Mom and Dad spoiled you because you couldn't handle anything on your own. Well, now you'll have to learn to deal with life without running to someone else for help." Those words had cut Catherine deeper than any physical wound ever could. She had tried to explain that she wasn't weak, that she simply believed in the importance of family sticking together. But Camilla had already made up her mind. She had walked out of Catherine's life that day, refusing to answer calls or respond to messages. Now, as Catherine sat in the hospital watching their father fight for his life, those words felt like poison in her veins. She wondered if Camilla was right. Was she really too weak to handle this alone? The thought terrified her because she felt like she was drowning in an ocean of medical decisions and impossible choices. Dr. Martinez, the neurologist treating her father, approached Catherine with a gentle expression. She was a woman in her 40s with kind brown eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. Catherine had grown to appreciate her honesty and compassion over the past 2 days. "How are you holding up, Catherine?" Dr. Martinez asked, sitting down beside her. Catherine tried to smile, but felt her lips quiver instead. "I'm okay," she lied. "Have there been any changes?" "I'm afraid not," Dr. Martinez said softly. "Your father's condition remains critical. The swelling in his brain hasn't responded to the medication as well as we had hoped. We need to discuss some important decisions about his care." Catherine felt her stomach drop. She knew what this conversation would involve, but she wasn't ready for it. How could she make life and death decisions about her father without Camilla there? They were supposed to face this together as a family. What kind of decisions? Catherine asked, though she already knew the answer. "We need to talk about whether to continue aggressive treatment or transition to comfort care," Dr. Martinez explained. "I know this is incredibly difficult, especially when you're dealing with this alone. Do you have any other family members who might be able to support you through this?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "I have a sister, but we're not speaking right now. I've been trying to reach her, but she won't answer my calls." Dr. Martinez nodded with understanding. Family conflicts can be especially painful during times like these. "Would you like me to try calling her?" Sometimes hearing from a medical professional can help people understand the urgency of the situation. Catherine considered the offer. Part of her wanted to say yes, to have someone else try to break through Camilla's wall of silence. But another part of her felt that it would be a betrayal of her sister's clear wishes to be left alone. "I don't know," Catherine admitted. She made it very clear that she didn't want anything to do with our family anymore. "I'm afraid that even this might not change her mind." The truth was that Catherine had been afraid of many things lately. She was afraid of losing her father, afraid of making the wrong decisions about his care, and afraid of spending the rest of her life regretting this moment. But most of all, she was afraid that Camilla's absence meant their father would die, feeling like his family was broken beyond repair. Robert had always been a peacemaker. During Catherine and Camilla's childhood, he had been the one to mediate their arguments and help them find common ground. He had never taken sides in their disputes, always insisting that family was the most important thing in life. Catherine knew that if he could speak right now, he would be begging his daughters to reconcile their differences. As the day wore on, Catherine found herself remembering happier times. She thought about family vacations when she and Camilla had been inseparable, sharing secrets and dreams as they built sandcastles on the beach. She remembered how Camilla had protected her from bullies at school, standing up for her little sister with fierce determination. They had been best friends once, before life and misunderstandings had driven them apart. The hospital chaplain, Father Williams, stopped by to check on Catherine. He was an elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle voice that somehow made people feel less alone in their darkest moments. "I've been praying for your father," he said, sitting down beside Catherine. "And for you. I know this must be incredibly difficult." "Thank you, Father," Catherine replied. "I keep thinking that I should be stronger, that I should know what to do. But I feel so lost." "Strength isn't about having all the answers," Father Williams said. "Sometimes it's about admitting that you need help and being brave enough to ask for it." "Have you considered reaching out to other friends or family members?" Catherine shook her head. "Our family is small. It's really just me, my sister, and Dad. And my sister," she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Family relationships can be complicated," the chaplain acknowledged. "But sometimes crisis has a way of putting things in perspective. People often find that the things they were angry about seem less important when faced with the possibility of permanent loss." Catherine wanted to believe that was true. She wanted to think that Camilla would eventually realize that their father was more important than whatever grudges she was holding. But as the hours passed without any response to her messages, Catherine began to lose hope. That evening, as visiting hours were ending, Catherine made the decision to stay overnight in the waiting room. The nurses had offered to call her if there were any changes, but she couldn't bear the thought of being away from her father. She curled up in the uncomfortable chair with a thin hospital blanket, trying to get some rest. Around midnight, she was awakened by the sound of her phone buzzing. For a moment, her heart leaped with hope that it might be Camilla finally returning her calls. But when she looked at the screen, she saw it was just a text from her friend Sarah asking how she was doing. Catherine typed back a brief message explaining the situation, and Sarah immediately offered to come to the hospital. Catherine was tempted to accept the offer because she desperately needed someone to lean on. But Sarah lived 3 hours away and had young children who needed her. Catherine couldn't ask her friend to make that sacrifice. As she put her phone away, Catherine noticed movement in her father's room. She hurried to his bedside, hoping that he might be waking up. But it was just a nurse checking his vital signs and adjusting his medications. The nurse, a young man named David, gave Catherine a sympathetic smile. "You should try to get some real sleep," David suggested. We'll take good care of him, I promise. I can't leave, Catherine said. What if he wakes up and no one he knows is here? What if? She couldn't bring herself to voice her biggest fear. David nodded with understanding. I've seen a lot of families go through this. The most important thing is that he knows you're here. Even if he can't respond, patients often can hear their loved ones talking to them. Why don't you tell him about your day, or share some happy memories? Catherine took her father's hand, noting how cold and fragile it felt. She began to speak softly, telling him about her students at school and how much they had enjoyed learning about butterflies. She shared memories of their camping trips when she was young, reminding him of the time they had seen a bear from their tent and how brave he had been in protecting his family. As she talked, Catherine found herself crying again, not just for her father's condition, but for all the pain their family had endured over the past few years. She thought about how proud Robert had always been of both his daughters and how heartbroken he would be to know they couldn't even be in the same room together during his final hours. I don't know what to do, Dad, she whispered. Camilla won't talk to me, and I have to make these decisions alone. I'm scared I'll choose wrong. I'm scared you'll be disappointed in me. The machines continued their steady beeping, and Catherine imagined she could hear her father's voice telling her that he could never be disappointed in her, that she was stronger than she knew. But those were just her own thoughts and wishes. The reality was that she was facing the most difficult challenge of her life without the support of the person who had always been her partner in facing family crises. As dawn approached, Catherine dozed fitfully in the chair beside her father's bed. She dreamed of happier times when their family had been whole and loving. In her dreams, Camilla was there, holding Catherine's other hand as they both said goodbye to their father together. But when she woke up, Catherine found herself still alone in the quiet hospital room, facing another day of impossible decisions and unanswered phone calls. The morning brought new challenges as Dr. Martinez returned with test results that confirmed Catherine's worst fears. Her father's condition was deteriorating, and the time for difficult decisions was approaching faster than anyone had hoped. Catherine listened to the medical explanations, trying to understand terms like brain death and life support, while part of her mind kept hoping that Camilla would walk through the door and help her navigate this nightmare. But the door remained closed, and Catherine remained alone with the weight of her father's life resting on her shoulders. She thought about Camilla's words about her being weak, and wondered if her sister would think differently if she could see her now, try to be strong for their dying father, while her heart broke into smaller pieces with each passing hour. The third day at the hospital began with Catherine waking up to find a crowd of medical professionals surrounding her father's bed. Her heart jumped in her throat as she watched them work, checking monitors and whispering to each other in urgent tones. Dr. Martinez noticed Catherine standing in the doorway and approached her with a grave expression. "We need to talk," Dr. Martinez said, guiding Catherine to a private consultation room down the hall. The room was small and sterile, with 2 chairs and a box of tissues on a small table between them. Catherine had seen too many families emerge from this room with red eyes and broken hearts. "Your father's brain activity has decreased significantly overnight," Dr. Martinez explained. "The scan this morning shows that the swelling has increased despite our treatments. I'm afraid we're running out of medical options." Catherine felt the room spinning around her. She gripped the arms of her chair, trying to steady herself as the doctor's words sank in. "What does that mean exactly?" she managed to ask. "It means we need to discuss transitioning him to comfort care. We can continue to keep him comfortable, but the aggressive treatments aren't helping anymore. His body is shutting down, and continuing invasive procedures would only cause him suffering without improving his condition." The words hit Catherine like physical blows. She had been hoping for a miracle, praying that her father would somehow fight through this and recover. The idea of giving up felt like betraying him, like admitting defeat when he was counting on her to fight for his life. "How long?" Catherine whispered. "It's difficult to say with certainty, but probably hours rather than days," Dr. Martinez said gently. "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but I believe your father would want to die with dignity, surrounded by love rather than machines. Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face. She thought about all the times her father had talked about death with a matter-of-fact acceptance that had both impressed and frightened her. He had always said he wanted to go peacefully when his time came, without being kept alive artificially. But hearing those conversations and actually making that decision were two completely different things. Can I have some time to think about it? Catherine asked. Of course. But, Catherine, I want you to know that whatever you decide, you're making out of love. There's no wrong choice here, only what feels right for your father and your family. Catherine returned to her father's room, feeling like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She looked at Robert's peaceful face, trying to imagine what he would want her to do. She knew the answer in her heart, but accepting it felt impossible. Her phone buzzed with another text from her friend Sarah, checking in and offering support. Catherine had been keeping her friends updated, but she hadn't told them about the decision she now faced. How could she explain that she was about to make the choice to let her father die? How could anyone understand the crushing responsibility of that moment? For the 100th time, Catherine tried calling Camilla. This time, instead of going straight to voicemail, the phone rang several times before her sister's familiar voice answered. What do you want, Catherine? The coldness in Camilla's voice was like ice water, but Catherine felt a surge of desperate relief just hearing her sister's voice. Camilla, thank God. It's Dad. He's in the hospital, and it's really bad. The doctors say, I know, Camilla interrupted. Mrs. Henderson from next door called me yesterday. She saw the ambulance. Catherine felt a moment of confusion mixed with hurt. You knew? Why didn't you call me back? Why didn't you come? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Camilla spoke again, her voice was strained. Because I can't do this anymore, Catherine. I can't keep getting pulled back into this family drama every time something happens. This isn't drama, Camilla. This is Dad. He's dying. Catherine's voice broke on the last word. People die, Kesslin. It's what happens. And Dad is old and has been sick for a while. This isn't exactly a surprise. Catherine felt anger flash through her grief. Their father was only 72, and while he'd had some minor health issues, no one had expected anything like this. How can you be so cold? This is our father we're talking about. Don't lecture me about being cold, Camilla snapped. You have no idea what I've been dealing with. You think everything should stop just because you need someone to hold your hand through another crisis. Another crisis? Catherine repeated, incredulous. When have I ever asked you to hold my hand through anything? I've been here alone for 3 days, making decisions about Dad's care while you ignore my calls. I never asked you to hold my hand. I asked you to be here for Dad. She heard Camilla sigh heavily on the other end of the line. Look, I'm sorry Dad is sick, okay? But I can't drop everything and come running every time something happens. I have my own life, my own problems. Catherine thought about the problems that had driven them apart 6 months ago. Camilla's divorce had been messy and expensive, and she had been under tremendous stress trying to rebuild her life. But Catherine had tried to be supportive during that time, offering both emotional and financial help. Now, when Catherine needed support, Camilla seemed determined to stay away. What problems are more important than being here when Dad is dying? Catherine asked. You wouldn't understand, Camilla said. You've always had it easier. Dad always loved you more. Mom always worried about you more. Everything always revolved around protecting poor little Catherine from the harsh realities of life. The accusation hit Catherine like a slap. That's not true, and you know it. Mom and Dad loved us both equally. They were proud of us both. Were they? Because I seem to remember Dad telling everyone how proud he was that you became a teacher, how sweet it was that you cared so much about children. Meanwhile, my success in business was just expected, never celebrated. Catherine remembered things differently. She remembered her parents bragging about Camilla's promotions and achievements, attending her business awards ceremonies with obvious pride. But she realized that siblings could experience the same childhood very differently, and Maybe Camilla had felt overlooked in ways that Catherine had never recognized. Camilla, even if that's true, Dad is dying. Don't you want to say goodbye? Don't you want to make peace with him before it's too late? There was another long silence. When Camilla spoke again, her voice sounded smaller, more vulnerable. I already said goodbye to him months ago. After our fight, I realized that our family was never going to change. We were always going to hurt each other, always going to disappoint each other. So I said goodbye then. But he hasn't said goodbye to you, Catherine said desperately. He's been asking for you. Even unconscious, I think he knows something is wrong between us. Don't let him die thinking his family is broken. Our family is broken, Catherine. It has been for years. Dad dying isn't going to fix that. Catherine felt something inside her snap. You're right. Our family is broken. But it's broken because you chose to walk away. It's broken because you decided that being right was more important than being together. Dad isn't dying because our family is broken. Our family is broken because you broke it. Don't you dare blame me for everything, Camilla shot back. You played your part in this too. You need to keep everything exactly the same, to never let go of the past, to make every decision about what would make everyone else comfortable instead of what actually made sense. They were rehashing old arguments while their father lay dying, and Catherine realized how pointless it was. I can't do this right now, Camilla. I have to make decisions about Dad's care, and the doctors need answers today. If you want to stay away and nurse your grudges, that's your choice. But don't pretend this is anyone's fault but your own. Fine, Camilla said, her voice cold again. Make your decisions. You always thought you knew what was best anyway. That's not true, and you know it. I wanted us to make decisions together as a family. That's all I ever wanted. Well, you can't always get what you want, Catherine. Sometimes you have to accept that people leave, that families fall apart, that not every story has a happy ending. The line went quiet, and Catherine thought for a moment that Camilla might have hung up. Then she heard her sister's voice again, softer this time. Is he suffering? No, Catherine said, wiping tears from her eyes. He's not in pain. He just looks peaceful, like he's sleeping. Good, Camilla whispered. I wouldn't want him to suffer. It's not too late, Camilla. You could still come. You could still see him before. Catherine couldn't finish the sentence. I can't, Camilla said. I just can't. Please try to understand. I don't understand, Catherine said honestly. I don't understand how you can stay away when he needs us both. I don't understand how you can let our family end like this. Maybe that's the difference between us, Camilla replied. You still believe families can be fixed. I learned a long time ago that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away before you cause more damage. The call ended abruptly, leaving Catherine staring at her phone in disbelief. She felt hollow inside, as if her sister's rejection had carved out another piece of her heart. She thought about what Dr. Martinez had said about there being no wrong choice, only what felt right for her father and family. But how could any choice feel right when her family was so fundamentally broken? Catherine spent the next hour sitting beside her father's bed, holding his hand and talking to him about Camilla. She told him about their conversation, about how much Camilla was hurting, and how sorry she was that she couldn't bring their family back together for his final days. I tried, Dad, she whispered. I tried to reach her, but I don't think she wants to be reached. I don't know if she ever did. As the afternoon wore on, Catherine met with Dr. Martinez again to discuss the transition to comfort care. It was one of the hardest conversations of her life, filled with decisions about pain medication, breathing support, and when to remove the machines that were keeping her father's body functioning. Each choice felt monumental, even though she knew in her heart that her father was already gone. We'll make him as comfortable as possible, Dr. Martinez assured her. You can stay with him, talk to him, play music if you think he'd like that. Many families find it peaceful to spend these final hours sharing memories and saying the things they want him to hear. Catherine nodded, grateful for the doctor's kindness. She thought about calling some of her father's friends to let them know what was happening, but most of them were elderly and lived far away. It struck her how small their world had become, how few people would even notice when Robert was gone. That evening, As the hospital grew quiet, Catherine settled into the chair beside her father's bed for what she knew would be their last night together. She had brought a photo album from home, filled with pictures from their family vacations and celebrations over the years. As she flipped through the pages, she shared memories with her unconscious father. "Remember this one?" she said, showing him a picture from her college graduation. "You and Mom were so proud. Camilla had just gotten that big promotion at work, and we all went out to celebrate together. We were so happy that day." She turned the page to find a photo from Camilla's wedding 5 years earlier. Their father looked handsome in his tuxedo as he walked Camilla down the aisle. Catherine remembered how emotional he had been during his speech at the reception, talking about how proud he was of both his daughters and how much he loved their family. "She was beautiful that day," Catherine said, touching the photo gently. "You were so happy to see her settled and in love. I wonder if she remembers how much joy you felt watching her start her new life." The machines continued their steady rhythm as Catherine talked through the night. She shared funny stories from her classroom, updated him on neighbors and old friends, and told him about the garden she had been planning for the spring. She talked about everything except the one thing that was weighing most heavily on her heart, that she was facing this alone, and that their family would never be whole again. As dawn approached, Catherine noticed changes in her father's breathing. The spaces between breaths grew longer, and his color began to fade. She called for the nurse, who confirmed what Catherine already knew in her heart. "It won't be long now," the nurse said gently. "Just keep talking to him. Let him know you're here." Catherine took her father's hand and leaned close to his ear. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "I'm here with you, and you don't have to worry about anything. You were the best father anyone could ask for. You taught me how to be strong, how to be kind, and how to love unconditionally. I'm going to miss you so much." She thought about calling Camilla one more time, giving her sister a chance to say goodbye, even if it was just over the phone. But she remembered the pain in Camilla's voice during their last conversation and decided that her sister had made her choice. Catherine would have to say goodbye for both of them. "Camilla sends her love." Catherine lied, hoping that somewhere in whatever remained of her father's consciousness, he might find comfort in believing his family was united in the end. "She wanted me to tell you how sorry she is that she couldn't be here, but she loves you very much. We both do." As the sun rose over the city, casting gentle light through the hospital room window, Robert took his final breath. Catherine felt the exact moment when he left them, when the father who had been her anchor and protector became just memories and an empty shell. She sat with him for a long time afterward, not ready to let go of their last moments together. The silence that followed her father's death was unlike anything Catherine had ever experienced. The machines that had provided a constant soundtrack to the past 4 days suddenly fell quiet, and the room felt empty in a way that went beyond the simple absence of sound. Catherine continued to hold her father's hand, which was already beginning to feel different, cooler, more still, somehow less substantial than it had been just moments before. The nurse, a kind woman named Janet who had been working the morning shift, entered quietly and placed a gentle hand on Catherine's shoulder. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said softly. "Take all the time you need. There's no rush." Catherine nodded, but couldn't find words to respond. She studied her father's face, memorizing every detail. The way his gray hair fell across his forehead, the laugh lines around his eyes, the small scar on his chin from a childhood accident he had told her about many times. These features that had been so familiar and comforting throughout her life now seemed to belong to someone else, someone who was no longer present in the room. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Catherine finally stood up. Her legs felt unsteady, as if the ground beneath her had shifted permanently. She leaned down and kissed her father's forehead, whispering one final goodbye before stepping back to allow the medical staff to begin their procedures. Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway, her expression compassionate but professional. "Catherine, I want you to know that your father's passing was peaceful. You made the right choice about comfort care. He wasn't in any pain." "Thank you." Catherine managed to say. Thank you for everything you did for him. For us. Would you like me to help you contact anyone? Sometimes making those calls can be overwhelming when you're grieving. Catherine thought about the short list of people who would need to know about her father's death. There were a few elderly neighbors, some old friends from his work, and distant relatives who exchanged Christmas cards but rarely spoke otherwise. Most painfully, there was Camilla. I think I need to make the calls myself, Catherine said. But thank you for offering. The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Catherine found herself speaking in a detached, automatic voice as she informed people of her father's death. Each conversation followed a similar pattern. Expressions of sympathy, offers of help, and questions about funeral arrangements that Catherine wasn't ready to answer. The call to Camilla was the hardest one to make. Catherine sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, staring at her sister's number on her phone screen for several minutes before finally pressing the call button. The phone rang 4 times before Camilla answered. Camilla's voice sounded strained, as if she already knew why Catherine was calling. He's gone, Catherine said simply. Dad died this morning at 7:43. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Catherine wondered if the call had been disconnected. Finally, she heard Camilla take a shaky breath. Was he in pain? Camilla asked. No, Catherine said. It was peaceful. He just stopped breathing. The doctor said it was exactly how most people would want to go, quietly, without suffering. Good, Camilla whispered, and Catherine could hear that she was crying. I'm glad he didn't suffer. Camilla, I know things have been difficult between us, but we need to talk about the funeral arrangements. I can't, Camilla interrupted. I can't do this right now. I need some time to process this. Catherine felt a familiar surge of frustration mixed with hurt. Even in death, their father couldn't bring his daughters together. He's our father, Camilla. Whatever problems we have with each other, we owe it to him to give him a proper funeral. I know that, Camilla said, her voice thick with tears. But I need time to figure out how to do this without everything falling apart again. What if I handle most of the arrangements? Catherine offered. You could just show up, say goodbye, and then we could go back to not speaking if that's what you really want. There was another long pause. Where are you planning to have a service? Catherine hadn't actually thought that far ahead yet. Probably at St. Mary's, where Mom's service was held. Dad always said he wanted to be buried next to her. Okay, Camilla said quietly. Let me know when you've planned everything. I'll try to be there. The call ended abruptly, leaving Catherine feeling emotionally drained and more alone than ever. She drove home to her father's house, a small ranch-style home where she had grown up and where Robert had continued to live after their mother's death. Walking through the front door felt surreal. Everything looked exactly as her father had left it 4 days earlier. His coffee cup still sitting on the kitchen counter, his reading glasses folded on top of the newspaper he had been reading before his stroke. Catherine wandered through the rooms, touching familiar objects and fighting waves of grief that seemed to come from nowhere. In her father's bedroom, she found his address book and began the process of calling more people to inform them of his death. Each conversation became slightly easier, but the reality of his absence grew heavier with every call. The funeral home recommended by Dr. Martinez was a small, family-owned business that specialized in simple, dignified services. The funeral director, Mr. Patterson, was a soft-spoken man in his 60s who seemed genuinely caring rather than simply professional. Catherine found herself making dozens of decisions, casket selection, flower arrangements, music choices, that felt both monumentally important and completely arbitrary. Your father sounds like he was a wonderful man, Mr. Patterson said as they reviewed the service details. I'm sure his funeral will be a beautiful tribute to his life. Catherine nodded, though she couldn't help thinking about how small the gathering would be. Without Camilla's certainty about attending, Catherine worried that she might be the only family member present to say goodbye to Robert. 2 days before the scheduled funeral, Catherine was cleaning out her father's papers when she discovered a letter addressed to both her and Camilla. The envelope was in her father's handwriting and marked to be opened after my death. Catherine's hands trembled as she carefully opened it, and began to read. "My dear daughters," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably dealing with all the difficult emotions and decisions that come with losing a parent. I want you to know that being your father has been the greatest joy and privilege of my life. I know that things have been strained between you two lately, and that breaks my heart more than any illness ever could. Families are messy and complicated, and people make mistakes and say things they don't mean. But at the end of the day, you two are sisters, and you're the most important people in each other's lives, whether you realize it or not. Catherine, you have always been the peacemaker in our family, the one who tries to hold everyone together. That's a beautiful quality, but don't sacrifice your own needs trying to fix relationships that other people aren't ready to repair. You are stronger than you know, and you don't need anyone else's approval to validate your worth. Camilla, you have always been fiercely independent, determined to make your own way in the world. I admire that strength, but don't let your independence turn into isolation. Pride can be a useful thing, but not when it costs you the people you love most. I hope that my death might remind you both that life is precious and unpredictable. The arguments you've been having will seem insignificant compared to the regret you'll feel if you let them keep you apart forever. Please don't let my funeral be the last time you see each other. I love you both more than words can express. Take care of each other. Love, Dad." Catherine read the letter 3 times, crying harder with each reading. She could hear her father's voice in every word, could picture him sitting at his kitchen table, writing this letter with the careful penmanship he had always used for important documents. She wondered when he had written it, and whether he had somehow sensed that his time was running short. Catherine picked up her phone and called Camilla, reading the entire letter aloud without preamble. When she finished, both sisters were crying. "He always knew exactly what to say," Camilla said through her tears. "Even when we were kids, he could cut through all our drama and get to the heart of what really mattered. He loved us so much," Catherine said. "Even when we were being stubborn and stupid, he never stopped believing we could work things out." "I've been thinking about what you said," Camilla continued, "about Dad dying thinking our family was broken. I keep imagining him lying there wondering why I wouldn't come see him, and it's killing me." Catherine felt a small spark of hope. "It's not too late, Camilla. I know he's gone, but the funeral could be a chance for us to honor him together. We don't have to fix everything between us overnight, but we could at least try to say goodbye as a family." "I want to try," Camilla said quietly. "I'm scared that we'll just end up fighting again, but I think Dad would want us to at least attempt to be civil to each other." "We can do civil," Catherine agreed. We've both had practiced being polite to difficult people. Despite everything they had been through, Camilla laughed at that comment. "Are you calling me difficult, little sister?" "If the shoe fits," Catherine said, surprising herself by smiling for the first time in days. They spent the next hour discussing funeral details and sharing memories of their father. The conversation wasn't easy. There were still hurt feelings and unresolved issues between them, but it felt like a beginning. Catherine found herself remembering why she had always looked up to Camilla, despite their recent problems. Her sister was funny and smart and fiercely loyal to the people she loved, even when she had a strange way of showing it. The day of the funeral arrived gray and drizzly, which seemed appropriate for such a somber occasion. Catherine arrived at the church early to make sure everything was arranged properly. She was adjusting the flowers near her father's casket when she heard footsteps behind her. "Catherine," she turned around to see Camilla standing in the doorway of the church. Her sister looked older than Catherine remembered, with new lines around her eyes and gray streaks in her brown hair. But she was there, dressed in a simple black dress and carrying a bouquet of white roses. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Catherine said honestly. "I wasn't sure either," Camilla replied. "But I kept hearing Dad's voice telling me that some things are more important than being right." The sisters looked at each other for a moment, both uncertain about how to navigate this reunion. Finally, Catherine stepped forward and hugged Camilla tightly. Her sister felt thin and fragile in her arms, and Catherine realized that the past 6 months had probably been difficult for Camilla in ways she hadn't fully understood. "I'm glad you're here," Catherine whispered. "Dad would be happy." "I'm sorry," Camilla said, her voice muffled against Catherine's shoulder. "I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. I'm sorry I let my own problems keep me from being a sister to you." "I'm sorry too," Catherine replied. "I should have tried harder to understand what you were going through instead of just focusing on what I thought our family should look like." The funeral service was small, but meaningful. About 20 people attended, old friends, neighbors, and a few distant relatives who had made the trip to pay their respects. Catherine and Camilla sat together in the front pew, and several times Catherine noticed her sister reaching over to squeeze her hand during particularly emotional moments. Catherine had prepared a eulogy about their father's life, his service in Vietnam, his career as a high school mathematics teacher, his devotion to his family. But when she stood up to speak, she found herself talking instead about the lessons Robert had taught his daughters about forgiveness, about the importance of family, and about how love sometimes means letting go of the need to be right. "My father believed that families were worth fighting for," Catherine said, looking directly at Camilla. "Not fighting against each other, but fighting for each other. Fighting against the things that try to pull us apart: pride, misunderstandings, the belief that we're too different to find common ground." He taught us that being a family doesn't mean never disagreeing or never hurting each other. It means choosing to work through the disagreements and heal from the hurts, because the relationship is more valuable than winning any argument. After the service, as people gathered at Catherine's house for a simple reception, the sisters found themselves working side by side in the kitchen, preparing coffee and arranging food just as they had done at countless family gatherings over the years. The familiar rhythm of their collaboration felt natural despite everything that had happened between them. "So what happens now?" Camilla asked as they watched their guests mingling in the living room. "I don't know," Catherine admitted. "I'd like to think we could find a way to be sisters again, but I know it's going to take time. We both said things that can't be taken back." "Maybe that's okay," Camilla said. "Maybe we don't need to go back to the way things were. Maybe we can figure out how to be sisters in a new way, one that works better for both of us." Catherine considered this. She had always assumed that repairing their relationship meant returning to their old dynamic, but maybe Camilla was right. Maybe they needed to build something different, something that acknowledged how they had both changed over the years. "I'd like that," Catherine said. "I'd like to try to be sisters in a way that doesn't require either of us to pretend to be someone we're not." As the evening wore on and the last guest departed, Catherine and Camilla found themselves alone in their childhood home for the first time in months. They sat at their father's kitchen table, sharing stories and looking through photo albums, slowly beginning the process of mourning together and remembering the good times their family had shared. Catherine knew that rebuilding their relationship wouldn't be easy or quick. There were still hurt feelings to work through, different perspectives to understand, and new boundaries to establish. But for the first time in months, she felt hopeful about the possibility that their family might not be permanently broken after all. Outside, the rain had stopped, and stars were beginning to appear in the clearing sky. Catherine thought about her father's letter and his faith that his daughters would eventually find their way back to each other. She couldn't know what the future would hold for her relationship with Camilla, but she was grateful that they were at least willing to try. "Dad would be proud of us," Camilla said quietly, as if reading Catherine's thoughts. "Yes," Catherine agreed, feeling a sense of peace that had been missing from her life for far too long. "I think he would be." The sisters sat together in comfortable silence, two women who had learned the hard way that sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what really matters. The journey ahead would still be challenging, but they would no longer be walking alone. In honoring their father's memory, they had taken the first tentative steps toward healing their family and rediscovering the bond that had sustained them through childhood and could, with patience and forgiveness, sustain them through whatever came next.